Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth session of the Schoolyard Forest Design Lecture Series. My name is Lauren McKenna with Green Schoolyards America, and I'm joined by our new Associate Director of Regional Programs, Mikaela Randolph. Our Operations Manager, Allison Torres, will be helping with tech support, along with some other staff who are here as well. Today's agenda will include some intro and updates, 3 presentations on the topic of stormwater schoolyards, followed by some Q&A time with our guest speakers. For those of you who are new here, this series is part of the National Schoolyard Forest System, which is a large-scale initiative to increase tree canopy on public school grounds across the U.S. to shade and protect pre-K through 12th grade students from extreme heat and rising temperatures due to climate change. California is the first state in this initiative, founded by Green Schoolyards America and 10 Strands in partnership with CAL FIRE and the California Department of Education. We hope that the sharing of information and expertise in this format around designing and caring for living schoolyards and schoolyard forests can help inspire you all to spread the word and advocate for systems change. We also hope that you will check out our National Schoolyard Forest System library, which includes many resources, advice, planning tools, curriculum ideas, case studies, and helpful articles. I'd like to remind you all of our chapter on design, implementation, and maintenance. It has resources related to designing and creating schoolyard forests, climate-adapted tree lists for California, and maintenance and stewardship recommendations. Related to today's topic, there are a lot of video presentations and rich written content on our Green Schoolyards America website about stormwater management in schools, featuring best practices and case studies from the U.S. and abroad. We will add a list of all of these resources in the chat for you to look at later. Our website also includes several schoolyard activity guides that have chapters on watershed stewardship and stormwater education, like creative art and placemaking activities, math, science, and ecology lessons. What's so fun about many of these activity ideas is that they're from colleagues from around the US and around the world, reminding us that wherever you are in a watershed that you can learn about, care for, and connect with. And we'll share links to those in the chat as well. Regarding this lecture series, reminder that this is an ongoing series throughout the year 2024, the first Thursday of each month, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time. All lectures are free and recordings are made public when ready. Our lecture next month is on April 4th and will feature research on how living schoolyards and schoolyard forests can help reduce extreme heat, as well as design recommendations to keep students cool at school. Please share the registration link with friends and colleagues. So now I will pass it off to my colleague, Mikaela, who will get us started.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everyone. Today's topic dives into designing school grounds to be stormwater management systems where kids can learn and play. We'll learn about some stormwater system basics and how living schoolyards and school forests can improve stormwater management and enrich ecological systems while providing students with rich opportunities for play and learning. Stormwater Schoolyards offer some exciting insights into thinking of schools as watersheds and functioning within the larger watershed system. Stormwater management on school grounds can be a way in which schools and school districts can get to more green on school campuses, thus creating multi-benefit solutions to manage water, increase green space where children learn and play, and reduce the effects of extreme heat felt on many school campuses. We are excited to welcome 3 speakers to today's design series to showcase some examples of how this is happening across the country and globally. Eileen Alduenda serves as the Executive Director of the Council for Watershed Health, and in this role, she directs the collaborative efforts for the Council for Watershed Health to advance the health and sustainability of local watersheds, rivers, and habitats in natural areas and urban neighborhoods. Eileen has over 20 years of experience collaborating with public agencies and nonprofit organizations in research, project design and implementation, and community education and engagement. Then we'll hear from Justin Hegarty, who is the executive director and environmental engineer for Reflow, a Milwaukee area nonprofit. With an aptitude for systems thinking, strategic planning, inclusive stakeholder engagement, Justin brings 10 years of private sector experience to bear in catalyzing the co-creation of community-supported green infrastructure projects that have leveraged over $24 million, planted 3,700 trees, established 210,000 square feet of native habitat, removed 13 acres of urban asphalt, and improved the daily lives of over 17,000 people while managing 2.4 million gallons of stormwater every time it rains. Justin has guided Reflow from its 2013 inception to a diverse team who cultivate meaningful partnerships throughout the Milwaukee area. And lastly, we'll hear from Sharon Danks, who is the CEO and founder of Green Schoolyards America. Sharon is an environmental city planner, social entrepreneur, researcher, and author who has worked to build and shape the Green Schoolyards field for 25 years. Throughout her career, she has focused on creating a paradigm shift in the way school grounds are designed, used, and managed so all children will have access to the natural world every day. Sharon is also the co-founder of International School Grounds Alliance and the author of the award-winning book, Asphalt Ecosystems, Design Ideas for Schoolyard Transformation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eileen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikaela. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Green Schoolyards of America. Appreciate the invitation and thank you for the opportunity to kind of share some of the work that I've been working on in the Council for Watershed Health. With the recent rains, it's a great time to get out there and look for opportunities on our schoolyards. And hopefully the information and examples I'll share with you today will inspire you to find ways to slow, spread, and sink the runoff in a number of different ways that result in wonderful connections to curriculum for all of our students. Because that's who we need to be keeping in mind when we're looking at managing stormwater and harvesting rainwater on our schoolyards. Next slide, please. So the Council for Watershed Health has been around. We're a nonprofit organization and we've been around for over 25 years. We have been working towards advancing the health and sustainability of our region's watersheds, rivers, streams, and habitats, both in natural areas and urban neighborhoods. And we do this in a number of different ways. And those are represented here in some of these photos where we've got folks giving tours to students of green infrastructure projects. We monitor pre and post performance of green infrastructure projects on school campuses. We've been coordinating connections to curriculum and we provide technical assistance for school greening projects. So why schoolyards? It's a great opportunity to think about our larger urban landscapes because schoolyards have pretty much all those same elements. They have the building footprints, the walkways, the expanses of asphalt and sometimes turf. And they often have courtyards and plaza-like areas that really lend themselves to these opportunities of harvesting rainwater and managing runoff in some ways that we can really connect to curriculum, as well as increase the volume of water that we can capture to replenish our local water supplies, improve water quality of any runoff that's leaving the site that ends up in our creeks and streams and communities. And they're great opportunities for increasing the amount of microclimates and urban coolings throughout our neighborhoods. And then they're also a really important opportunity when we redesign our schoolyards to include living systems to connect to that natural and cultural history of place. Next slide, please. So we start at the watershed, right? We want to look at watersheds. And what is a watershed? Well, it's that area of land that's bounded by a hydrologic system within which all living things are linked by their common water course, and where, as humans settled, simple logic demanded that they become part of a community. And that was the definition that we use from John Wesley Powell, a scientist and geographer. And it's been really important to kind of keep in mind that we're thinking about and we're planning for living systems. Next slide. Because in a healthy watershed, what we see is the natural hydrologic system where there's high infiltration rates, there's soil, plants, trees working together to manage that, that rainfall. Next slide. And in our urban landscapes, that's changed over time. We evolve, we try and make sure that we're, next slide. Oh, sorry, go back, urban, there we go. In our urban landscape, we lose that soil typically to development. I mean, we need our roads, we want our buildings, we want our sidewalks. And in our car-centric kind of communities, we're looking at parking lots, right? So all those surfaces shed water. They do not absorb water like the soil does. So next slide. So what we want to try and do in our watersheds is mimic those natural processes that we find in a healthy hydrologic system. So we're looking at absorbing water, we're looking at putting it to a beneficial use in terms of irrigating vegetation and trees ideally. We're also looking at the benefits of evapotranspiration and so on. So the school's role in the watershed is really important, again, because it has a lot of those urban elements, right? And so if we look at a larger watershed, I'm going to take us to the LA River watershed, which is up here in the upper left-hand corner. You can see the hard line outline, the bold outline is the entire LA River watershed, and that red arrow is an indication of where one of our demonstration projects is that has a connection to a school. So it's all the way up there in the top of the watershed, which is a great place to be because it gives you a chance to kind of manage water in small and large volumes before it works its way down. Because this area connects to the LA River, which flows all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. The middle slide shows the historic hydrology in the blue and the urban hydrology that we've overlaid with our streets and roads and freeways in white. And as you move over to this far right image, you'll see it's a really increased view of a main flow that goes right through a neighborhood, the Elmer Avenue neighborhood, indicated by that red dot, where we have two projects that we tested out. We did a pilot on how can you manage stormwater? How do you capture it, clean it, and infiltrate it without undermining our water quality and of our local groundwater supplies? And it's a great location to do that because the soils are really high in infiltration rates. Sun Valley Magnet School is just south of that, and that's where we started making the connection to this school by bringing students to Elmer Avenue and Elmer Paseo to learn about how do you capture, clean, and infiltrate stormwater in a beneficial way. Next slide. So keeping in mind, it's always helpful to kind of keep in mind how much water is generated on an impervious surface. And so in 1 inch rain events, and we know that our rain events are becoming more, they're increasing in volume. So a 1 inch rain event is not uncommon. On 1,000 square feet of impervious surface, be it a rooftop, a parking lot, a walkway, an asphalt playground, it's going to generate 600 gallons of runoff. What do you do with all that water? Well, first of all, we need to kind of think about that. What is happening with that water? Next slide. And that water is essentially carrying pollutants and toxins from those surfaces. It moves through spaces, landscape that is not vegetated, and it results in erosion, and it can result in flooding, as these pictures indicate. And the one on the left is just south of our Elmer Paseo project, and it's a crosswalk over to Sun Valley Magnet School. So you can see the impact that not being able to absorb stormwater can have on schools. Which reminds me that, with the rain days, I'm kind of curious, what did people do when you were in elementary school and you had a rain day and you couldn't go out and play? So I'd be interested in hearing what you did inside that classroom. In the chat, go ahead and put that in there, because one of my favorite things was to do a play eraser tag in that classroom. And that maybe dates me a little bit because I'm not quite sure how many erasers Chalk erasers are still in classrooms. So what we want to get to is we want to get to those school days, those rain days, where after or even during the rain, students have an opportunity to be outside under the protection of trees or awnings, and still engaging outside. Next slide. And one strategy, so I'm going to go through some strategies of how it's being done on schoolyards. One important strategy are trees. And this is nothing new. The benefits of these trees, of putting trees on school campuses, really are important opportunities because they start to help reconnect us to that natural hydrologic cycle where we're increasing the absorption of the rainfall in the soil. And we're creating cooling for those urban spaces on school campus. And we're increasing transpiration as well, and infiltration goes up. The important thing about trees as well is that it's starting to intercept the rainfall before it hits the ground. And so if we can slow it out through the tree canopy, it's also spread out through the tree canopy. And then when it falls on the ground, ideally there's an area around that drip line where water can soak in. So starting with trees is always a great place to start. Many schools already have trees on campus. There are opportunities where those trees have maybe been removed for one reason or another, and that's an important one. So let's go through the other scenarios. A lot to go through here. So 6 different ways that you can manage rainwater and stormwater on campuses include vegetated swales, stormwater planters, rain gardens. Permeable paving is an important opportunity, as well as above ground cisterns and water-wise landscapes. And ideally, we want to get to ecosystems. So I'm going to take you through a couple of examples of how this was done, starting with Victory Elementary School in Los Angeles. It was an LAUSD project that looked at the vast expanse of asphalt on the campus. The arrows indicate the flow of water. You can see there are existing trees there to start to build from. And the next slide shows you where it's going. So now the water flowing is intercepted by some rain gardens and swales. It continues down towards those classrooms where there's an amphitheater and rain gardens, as well as other swales on this classroom. So again, there's opportunities here that can continue to be expanded, but it's a great starting point. Next slide. This is a view of those swales and the smaller trees and the existing trees. Next slide. The amphitheater serves as an outdoor classroom. It's grown in. There are a lot of pollinators there. The rain barrels and cisterns are being used for the garden space for non-edibles. And the rain garden picture gives you a sense of what that looks like when it does rain. It fills up and then it sinks in, and it's increasing the water quality by removing any pollutants and toxins. That's what our monitoring has shown. Next slide. Okay, so whenever we have an opportunity, we want to show the flow. And I think this is an amazing example of how we can do that, just starting at the top of the watershed, which is our rooftops, and showing that flow through some really artistic downspouts, making sure that water is then moving away from those buildings into planting areas that can be used as outdoor classrooms. This is in Philadelphia. Next one, next slide, please. Thinking about spaces between classrooms really is an opportunity to disconnect those downspouts and move them into a space that is informally used as a learning space, as well as a formal connection to curriculum. Next slide. Planters, again, between spaces and on the perimeter can be really valuable in kind of using long areas and breaking it up so that you can get some filling of those planter areas that then spill into the next one. Next slide. And then again on the perimeter, rain gardens and vegetated swales. The picture on the right, on the left is the dry season, and the picture on the right is the wet season at a local elementary school in Los Angeles, Normandy Elementary School, which already had a lot of trees around the perimeter, and it was increased in terms of the opportunities to harvest the stormwater runoff. Next slide. Swales again around the perimeter. This is a really wide swale at Webster Middle School. It was part of LAUSD's DROPS program to reduce the amount of asphalt. And on the right side, you can see where the edge of the athletic field comes to meet that swale. The swale is actually where there was asphalt. So it's now become a nice buffer between the school and the neighborhood, and it takes off a lot of runoff from that from the basketball courts. Next slide. And at Eagle Rock Elementary School, which I know Green Schoolyards of America had a fantastic design series on. I encourage you to go learn more about it. Trees were a key element for this one, for Eagle Rock Elementary School. It's an important connection to curriculum, an important connection to the community as well. The format of these trees is in a row, and it's creating more spaces within the expanse of asphalt to intercept any stormwater runoff that is coming from either direction. Next slide. And I just want to hone in on Eagle Rock Elementary School because I think this design is really important for how we can start integrating more trees into the schoolyard, because they can be done in a number of different ways. We just saw the image of the school, the trees in a row, and up in the top there's trees in little groups, and then surrounding spaces. Over to the right is that nature-based classroom. 3 different ways that we can use trees on classrooms in schoolyards, and it's again a great way to start. And let me wrap up with just that curriculum connection. I think I'm getting close to being over time here. So again, the opportunity to connect to curriculum. There are so many ways to do that. This is one from Willard Elementary School that asked students to really think about what they wanted on their campus, how they would like to see trees brought in. And it's a great opportunity to include students in that design of your schoolyard, because then it can result in some really beneficial opportunities when students are in their classrooms looking out. In terms of those benefits of mental and physical health, and then that connection to nature, which is my last slide. Next slide. Right. Trees are an opportunity to, again, re-establish or strengthen those connections students have with nature and their natural systems. Through trees is, again, one way where we can start on schoolyards. So with that, I'll thank you for allowing me to share the information, and I'll pass it to Justin.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, my name is Justin Hegarty. I am the Executive Director and Environmental Engineer at the nonprofit Reflow. We are in the Milwaukee area, and so I'm going to concentrate a lot of our discussion today on kind of Midwest, Upper Midwest projects. To date, Reflow has worked with our local public school district on over 40 schoolyard redevelopment projects, and we have a small team that helps to make that happen. So we'll go to the next slide. We focus a lot on schools, so the opening presentation was great, thinking about schools as well. Just from our perspective, just to add to that we have hundreds of thousands of students, family members, and teachers interacting with these spaces on a daily event. And so we from a kind of a strategic perspective on engaging the public, there's a significant opportunity here to talk about community-based water projects. And if we go to the next slide, we'll zoom in a little bit closer on Milwaukee. That dark blue line is the city of Milwaukee. This map behind there is this area deprivation index, which was produced through our university system about ranking socioeconomic disadvantage on a statewide basis. And we have significant disparities in the city of Milwaukee compared to our local suburbs. And so trying to bring in resources to support our urban school system is extremely important. And we are the school district, and Milwaukee Public Schools is the largest in the state with over 70,000 students, 80+ +% are economically disadvantaged. So we'll go to the next slide. And I'm just going to share a couple pictures of before and after schools. We have a lot of asphalt, just like many of our urban school districts. We'll go to the next slide. This is Bayview Montessori K3 through 8th grade. This is afterwards. This is a Montessori school. So we are actively designing these spaces to be in alignment with the school's curriculum as well. The Montessori program has a lot of hands-on, kind of tactile learning opportunities. And so in this case, there are 4 outdoor classroom spaces. Each one is designed for a different suite of activities to be done in them. One's a performing arts space. One is more of like a science-based. One is a silent reading space, and one is kind of a discovery of this native planting area that we have behind the school. On the left-hand side, you can see this channel, that kind of zigzaggy channel. Water gets funneled through there. And the concept there is that we can observe that stormwater runoff going through, and possibly students can run different experiments in that channel before it gets deposited into a bioswale with an underground cistern that helps to treat and slow down that stormwater. We'll go to the next one. And then here's Benjamin Franklin. This is a little bit smaller scale. We have a lot of chain link fencing at our schools, a lot of asphalt. Next slide. And so here we have a pretty strategic placement of this bioswale. In the middle there is a large hill that has a pathway around around it. With these projects, we're actively embedding traffic safety with some of the recreational features. And so we're seeing Gaga Ball, and we're seeing these, what we call traffic gardens with roundabouts and 4-way intersections. So students from a young age have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about how to be safe on our streets as well. So the next slide. Here's Kluge, K3 through 5th grade, a ton of asphalt. Go to the next slide. And so in this case, we're able to remove 60 to 70% of the asphalt and put in large green spaces. On the left-hand side, we have a soccer field or football field. We have those large depression areas are bioswales that are managing lots of stormwater. Our sewerage district, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, challenged us with trying to capture the 100-year rain event on all of the sites and quadruple the amount of gallons that we capture across the 5 schoolyards that we reconstruct every year. And so we are doing that now, and that means a lot of stormwater management. That's a big driver for a lot of our costs and fundraising for these projects. But we also have outdoor classrooms. In the middle of this picture, you'll see a shade structure that was currently under construction at the time. Recreational components, oftentimes we're replacing tot lot equipment at the same point that we're putting in new green infrastructure and outdoor classrooms. And then lots of strategic plantings of trees so that we're helping to shade and reduce the urban heat island component as well. Let's go to the next slide. A different school, very different from most of our urban schools, is a 70-acre high school that's on the kind of the north end of our school. But even in this case, we have a large grass space that folks were cutting the grass every week. And so if we go to the next slide, as a part of this program, we were able to plant about 2,700 trees and reforest that grass space. This was also in alignment with the curriculum at the high school. They have a culinary arts program, and so we planted an orchard as well so that those students could harvest that the fruit in coming years and bring that into the classroom as well. Next slide. Perfect. So yeah, so this is a good picture. We kind of talked a little bit about stormwater green infrastructure. I keep using the language of bioswales. Again, that's managing stormwater in this kind of more natural green space. And we're doing that through different types of filtering. And with the plantings, there's some bioabsorption that it takes place as well to help further treat that stormwater. In this case, this is kind of a good picture. You can see the stormwater running off and into that green space in the center, and then trying to build in outdoor educational opportunities through there as well. What I also like about this picture, we've learned a lot, and I see in the chat too, about the transitions. This was a cohort 2 school. This upcoming summer is cohort 6. So we've learned a lot since this picture was taken and the school was redeveloped. But we're also upcycling ash trees. For those that may be familiar, the emerald ash borer has downed a lot of our urban trees. And so in this case, we're taking trees that have come down and we're trying to use them to help build the perimeter around different features that need to be protected, or the surfacing needs to be better managed by having that kind of vertical separation. And that helps, especially around the bioswales. We've learned to try to help direct students' energies to go through the pathways in the bioswales as opposed to just kind of running wholesale through the bioswale. And so those vertical and those pathways have been really helpful in that. We'll go to the next slide. Let's see a little bit more. These are more kind of specific types of green infrastructure. Depaving and classifying depaving as a green infrastructure technique has been really important locally. That hasn't always been the case, but recognizing it as has been helpful. We are installing lots of underground cisterns, and oftentimes before the pandemic, especially, we were using those as opportunities to engage the community to help assemble those in alignment with contractors. Native prairies, of course, and support for local pollinator species. Tree planting and urban reforestation has been important for us as well. Next slide. And then on the top left, putting the outdoor classrooms near some of these stormwater management features has been a really great opportunity. Oftentimes, there's access to increased biodiversity, so they're getting experiences with maybe bunnies and different animals, insects, etc., birds. The bottom left is an example of tree protection around the trees that may be in areas that are a little bit more prone to student energy. And so we're trying to protect the first few years while those trees grow up. It is more expensive, but especially for those trees that are kind of in these running zones, to make sure that they're protected and being managed from pulling on the lower limbs for the first few years. And then in some cases, we are able to harvest rainwater on the school sites and use that, in this case, for a farm that is at this particular school. We'll go to the next slide. And this is very much a partnership to make this happen. Over the years, we've had really strong partnerships with the public school system, their foundation, the nonprofit Reflow. Over the years, we've also built this local network, what we call the Green Schools Consortium of Milwaukee, which is this regional network of educators and funders and agencies and those that want to support this work from different means. And then our sewage district has been a very big promoter, as well as our city of Milwaukee and private philanthropy. And we have a relatively recent relationship over the past 3 or 4 years with our local medical college that's actively pursuing in research activity around these projects. We're putting GPS units and accelerometers on students, and we're monitoring their attendance and test scores as well, to see what the impact is on the student body, as well as the parents as well. Next slide. I'm going to go kind of quickly. A big important part of this has been defining the process. And so we use this process diagram. We figured this one out a while back, and we tweaked it a few times, and it's largely stayed the same over the past 4 or 5 years because it just works. But that top bar, that color-coded bar, is pretty much any project, but especially infrastructure projects. You come up with an idea, you find resources to support that idea, you refine that idea, and then you implement it, and then you work to maintain it. In this case, this has been really important to revolve around our public schools facilities and maintenance services. And so they define for us that they really want these projects to happen over summer to reduce the impact on the academic year. So we have about 2.5 months to construct these projects, which is a pretty intense activity. So literally the day after school ends, contractors are removing asphalt, and they're moving as quickly as possible so that construction is wrapped up. And the nonprofit Reflow works very hard to help to daylight what's happening. So we're taking students on tours of these spaces during construction and trying to connect career pathways as well. Next slide. To date, there have been many successes over the last 5 years. About $20 million has been raised About 70% of that has been related to stormwater management and has been a significant lever for moving these projects forward. A lot of asphalt removed, lots of stormwater managed. Over 3,200 trees have been planted, again, in an urban school district. Lots of native plantings. And then the biggest one is the impact on our students and community members. All of these spaces are publicly accessible, and that's a very significant design criteria as well. After school hours, all of these spaces are open and they're being used by the surrounding community. And so that impacts our design, of course. On the right-hand side, you can see some quick quotes from students, K4, 4-year-old, talking about how they're making the connection to litter and how that is impacting their watershed and how they're going to try to change their practices. And then a 7th grader is on the bottom there is talking about how they want to take that lesson back to their family as well. And so the impact on the students is significant, and that's something that we continue to monitor and navigate as we go forward. Next slide. And environmental education is a really important part of this. Lisa Neeb, our Green Healthy Schools program manager, also manages our environmental educational activities. And so we're actively training educators on how to use these brand new school spaces and providing them with the professional development that they need and the resources they need. And then also modeling different activities that can be done outdoors. In the interest of time, we'll go to the next slide. But those pathways through the bioswales have been really important for us. It's a great way to get students direct connections with those kind of more naturalized environments. We're actively kind of pushing the boundaries to try to use the spaces throughout the entire school year. So that may mean also trying to raise funds for, winter weather as well, winter weather clothing. We designed and build these outdoor discovery carts on the bottom left-hand side. So again, trying to provide those tools for educators. And we're building exhibits to help to demonstrate how water moves through these new environments as well. Next slide. And then really quick, we're hiring high school students to help maintain the projects over summer. So this year we'll be hiring about 8 to 10 high school students for about 30 hours of work every week. There's all sorts of career exploration, but we really like to push the boundary on trying to think about maintenance as an opportunity as opposed to a liability. This doesn't solve everything. Maybe it's able to kind of chew on about 60% of the maintenance responsibilities, but it is a really great opportunity to employ our youth and have them actively engage from an early on in the ongoing maintenance of these types of projects too, and early career exploration. Next slide. And then we do also employ students during the school year and trying to use the schoolyard redevelopment projects to inspire other types of sustainability projects, possibly planting gardens, doing trash cleanups and community organizing as well. Okay, next slide.
Thank you so much, Justin, and we'll pass it off to Sharon.
Hello, everybody. It was wonderful to see all those great examples and explanations, Justin and Eileen. Thank you so much. So what I've brought here to share with you today is kind of a whirlwind tour of some of my favorite places I've seen. I've had the opportunity to travel around the world looking at school grounds over the last 25 years, and I've pulled from my photo archive some examples that I think are representative of well, they're things that inspired me, and I think they tell a story together. And so I'm going to show you more pictures and give you less detail about them. I just want to put the ideas and the designs that they've done in your head. So next. So I'd like to just start out by saying I think there are, in my mind, there are 3 kind of different reasons to do this type of work, and ecological design of school grounds in general I would categorize into 3 different levels of impact as well. And for most of the last, say, 30 years of this field, most of the work on school grounds has been at the demonstration scale, where we do something small like these rain barrels and the picture on the left that are great teaching tools. And those are that's a good goal to have their schools. And so education is, of course, important, and hands-on learning is great. And so that's one goal. The second level of impact, it doesn't actually change so much about how the school's impact on the environment, but it teaches kids about what they could be doing in other places later on in life and why it's important. Then there's the concept of like that school level impact, where you have a project that's big enough that it reduces the school's impact on the surrounding neighborhood. And so in the stormwater context, that is something like the picture in the middle, which is the elementary school I attended in Illinois that has a rooftop, it takes the drainage from the rooftop and puts it into swales so that the water can soak in right next to the school. It doesn't take all the runoff from the whole school, just that one area. And then the third level, which I think is a lot more rare and is what Justin was talking about, is district scale impact, of where you have dozens of schools in a district or the whole district working toward a goal that relates to a particular type of ecological design. So in this case, stormwater management, not just on one site, and they're more extensive at each site. The goal is to make them and I guess you don't have a net zero concept in so much in stormwater, but the idea of like having them be self-sufficient, taking the water processing the water in this case that they generate, and doing that at all the schools. So the examples I have follow this pattern of demonstration scale, school level impact, and district level impact. Next. And so the first one here is an example of a watershed model a school in California did a long time ago. It's their own, can you go back to the watershed for a second? Their own watershed that has a vertical exaggeration, but the teachers can go outside to the watershed model, sprinkle some soil on it, pour water down it, and explain to students how watersheds work. And it's a demonstration model. It's made out of concrete, so it's sturdy enough for kids to climb on it at recess too. And so it's just a piece of a teaching tool that's permanent in this school. Next. And then we have this school in a preschool in Japan that has hundreds of children. I think they have 500 kids at this preschool. And it has what I think of as like a stormwater appreciation hallway on the outside, where in all schools in Japan take off their shoes when they go inside. So there's a shoe changing area on this deck, which is the decks like this are fairly standard in a Japanese school. But they take off their shoes and they go inside. But what they've done here is they've projected the covering over the top so that you can see the rain falling. You can stay dry on the inside, but be out in the rain and observe it. And the principal's gone one step further. He has, like, you can see on the picture on the left, he's attached that watering can to the end of his downspout so that it makes kind of a dramatic water flow that's fun for the kids who are 3 to 5 years old at this school. Next. Another school in Japan here, another preschool, has this one is not stormwater, it's hand washing water. A lot of schools in Asia have hand washing stations outside that the kids wash their hands after recess, and then they go inside to their classroom. And this one put those water taps, freshwater taps, on top of a permeable surface so that they don't go back into a drain. They just sink into the ground right outside. Next. And so I guess that one's both demonstration and functional. And then this one is an example from Thailand, where this classroom, which is outside, has a roof style that, instead of putting it into a single downspout, allows the water to spread a little bit more and go more gently into the landscape around it. And also dramatically, if you're on the inside of the building when it's raining, which is every day pretty much, it cascades down and kind of curtain of rain, which is also really interesting, both the sound of it and the visual of it, kind of in the rain appreciation lens too. Next. Okay, moving up the scale into a little bit bigger school level impact. This, looking at a school in Taiwan that has really kind of a soup to nuts ecological design approach in general, but looking at their stormwater design in subtropical climate that gets a large amount of rain. Next. They have put in a lot of features. And first they pointed out, and this is the only place I've ever seen this, that humidity can be a teaching tool, and in this case, a writing tool. It's so humid there that the humidity sticks to the glass, and this is where they practice calligraphy painting with brushes, or as the principal was showing me, he was doing his finger, and I think it says welcome visitors or something like that on it. But it's where they go to practice their calligraphy just with the humidity. Next. And then all the ground surfaces at this school, which is in the mountains outside of Taipei, are designed for rain. And so they are educating kids about where the water is going. In that first picture, they have permeable surfaces in the middle top, elevated walkways in places where the water pools for longer, and then a lot of drainage solutions at different places that allow stormwater to soak in, but mosquitoes not to propagate. like that one on the far right with the gravel that keeps the mosquitoes out. Next. They also have a creek that runs through their site, and it's very shallow, and it's part of the play environment, and kids are encouraged and allowed to play in the creek as well as the rest of the grounds. Next. And they have so much rain and so many giant cisterns that they actually flush all the toilets in the whole school for like 400 or 500 kids every day year round with stormwater. And they have on-site signage about how that happens, but he's showing me the system and where it's coming from and going to. Next. Okay, moving across the world to Minnesota, here is an example on a smaller scale of a stormwater inlet into a schoolyard forest, and you can see the forest wrapping around the school property, and there's 2 wetlands or ponds actually on the top, on the right and left. So next, and the parking lot has an inlet from it that goes into, you can see in the background how the ground surface is lower, so it flows. There's a little bit of snow on the ground there, but when it's raining, it goes through that inlet and into that bowl-shaped area in the background. Next, which is, you can see more clearly here. Next. And we'll follow the water around in a swale that they've just landscaped in. Next. And I think the schoolyard water also joins it into this forest. So we're on the edge of the forest looking out at the play fields. Next. And then the destination of the water in the pond, which has an outdoor classroom space next to it too. Next. And then moving over to Sweden, we have another example of a whole school site that has been designed for stormwater drainage and an overflow. So the school here is abuts a park. The school buildings have gray roofs and living roofs in this picture in the middle, and the wedge of green space behind them is a city park, but it has the overflow. I'll show you in a second. Next. And so when you come into the school, the landscape has forest around it and in it, and that includes understory plants. Next. And they have a lot of living roofs that slow the water down as it comes off the roof. So it just takes a little longer to hit the downspouts. So they get fewer high peaks of massive amounts of runoff. Next. And the landscape has permeable surfaces made out of all different materials, sand and brick on sand, things like that. Next. And when the runoff comes off these buildings in the downspouts, which go on surface flow channels that are open and slightly recessed. And so the rain will come down from that downspout and go into that around the playground. And then I guess if it gets too high, it goes into the middle drain. Next. A lot of it's meant to also just infiltrate where it is. But when it goes in the drain, it then follows around this swale that's on the surface of the school. Next. And then keeps going around. Next. And ends up in this the seating area that's designed for temporary stormwater detention. So most of the time this is dry. In a high storm, it's a little wet on the bottom, but you can still use the upper tiers. And it has a kind of a concentric design, so that the center there, I think, is where their drain is, and also maybe where the water goes first from that one inlet, and last, I guess, stays wet there. And just like how they pick up the circle design in their windows, there's a cute little doll poking out of that one that I liked. Next. And then this, I think, is brilliant. It's a basketball court that they sunk about 6 inches. And so that whole area is a temporary stormwater detention area that mostly is dry, but the perimeter of it is not paved and absorbs the stormwater. It has inlets in a bunch of different places. And so that gives them massive stormwater detention capacity temporarily. Next. And this is out back of the school. When there's too much stormwater, it flows into this swale. Next. And then the last set, this is the city of Berlin, Germany, has amazing, amazing schoolyard design. I think a model for a lot of the world in stormwater. Next. And they've really designed stormwater infrastructure to be ideal for children and optimized for children. And Berlin was a political island for a long time. They needed to really have a good water supply. They're very interested in sinking the stormwater and being ecologically sound. So the laws are structured to encourage all property owners to infiltrate all their stormwater to avoid a fee structure that's in place that if you don't do it. And so this has been there for about 25 years, and they have some of the best school grounds for kids in the world and for stormwater. Next. and I think it was about 400 schools unpaved about 25 years ago, and they are designed to absorb the biggest storm in 10 years, which is a vast amount of water, and contain that on the property. And so they were all paved urban schools, and they now more look like this, all variations of this, where all the ground surfaces are permeable. They have a ton of tree canopy. So they call them sponge school grounds, meant to soak up the rain and also shade the kids. As the trees have grown up, they have incredible shades. Next. So this is optimized green infrastructure, highly effective green infrastructure optimized for children. So you can see in this shot at this school, there's a contoured design where the stormwater goes to the center of the grounds. They generally take out all the storm drains, like regrade the site, make hills, cut and fill, so that the water from the rooftops and from the parking lots and from the site itself soak in on site. Next. And this is another preschool version. Next. Which one are we on? And then the overall maintenance, I'd say, because they're not doing high-tech types of, they're doing gravity fed, really smart engineering that helps the maintenance stay simple. It's park maintenance, not technical stormwater maintenance. And so you can, they find it very cost effective to maintain. Next. And so this site plan next of the school ground overall shows that they're at this other school there, this is a big infiltration area on bricks on sand that is more formal space for an amphitheater. Next. And you've got this is an infiltration area right in the middle of a playground at a school. Next. And then lastly, this school is one of my favorites in Berlin. It's Green School, and the yellow line is their property line. They have 28% tree canopy right now, which is amazing on the entire property, including the buildings, where as an average, 74% of the area the kids play in is shaded, which is amazing. So these are also very climate ready schools. Next. With avoiding extreme heat. And this is what the grounds look like with permeable surfaces in the courtyards. Next. And the one paved area is their sports zone, and it has a drainage area on the side, which goes to that play area. Next. And in the play space, it looks like this with multi-use seating platforms for seating and working outside. Next. These all used to be paved, flat and paved, and part of the play area with all different materials. Next. And it's a really fun place for kids. And so I encourage, next, I think that's it. Encourage everyone, as you're thinking about school grounds, to use, to unpave the most that you can, do extensive work, not intensive work. It's a lot more forgiving as high flows happen. Try to add the words where students benefit to policy around taking out stormwater, taking out asphalt, do this stormwater work where children benefit, not in the parking lot. Make your first investments in the places where children will benefit. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sharon, Eileen, and Justin for being with us today. I know that was so much wonderful information. We have so many great questions. We'll try to address them in the chat and or email you after. So a couple questions that I think are important for us to address is someone asked about keeping kids, putting up a fence or keeping kids out of stormwater management areas. And I know the answer, but maybe if Sharon could just give an elevator pitch about how you'd respond to that.
About how, sorry, I think when we, I understand the question correctly, school ground land is really precious, and the space devoted to kids in cities is also rare. And so when we're working on school grounds, we try to seek designs that don't exclude kids in the process of making the outcome that you'd like. And so we're looking, in the case of stormwater, for stormwater regulations to be solving for both stormwater infiltration and management and children at the same time. And so that usually is kind of, the Berlin model does it really well. They just unpaved everything that didn't need to be paved, and made it so low tech that it allows the kids to play in the whole space. They don't lose land like they would if you dug a deep pit and put up a high fence for a really intensive, small footprinted stormwater area.
Absolutely. And I know Justin shared a few examples of your schools where kids have access to those spaces. It's part of the schoolyard.
Those are great.
A few people asked about materials, like surface migration, gravel, more low-tech materials that might move around and shift in a space. And how would you address that from a design standpoint? That question is for anyone. I've seen people put up, there's a way of putting edging and curbing and things like that, or trying something out and finding that maybe the material is not the best use for a particular location on site, maybe little feet or scooting things around, but go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, appreciate that. So we went with a crushed granite earlier because we could soak in more stormwater, as more permeable than our hard surface. However, as you mentioned, the students would kind of use that as a sandbox or kind of shuffle that around. And we had a lot of migrating granite into other surfaces that became a slip hazard. And so we're not doing that anymore, but a good replacement, maybe the brick patios or the other approaches for those hardscapes that may need to be hardscaped. And then also the perimeters, like you mentioned, like curbing, and we tend to like to use these log perimeters as well, because there's all sorts of tactile discovery opportunities for the students. They can see the path that the insects had gone through, and then they can also be used for balance and seating, etc.
Maybe one last question to wrap us up. And again, we'll try to email some responses to the question after this, is related to maintenance and stormwater management areas or stormwater stewardship areas. So for example, keeping mosquitoes out of standing water. Who is it on the maintenance team, at least maybe Eileen, with the projects you're familiar with, and Justin, your schools, who has the most connection with maintaining those spaces?
So let me just be clear, the projects I shared are not our projects. We had a role that was coordinating and including training of facility staff on how to maintain and even monitor each of those different elements. And so the training goes back to the facility folks on the school campus, which is usually school district staff. And they're very skilled, very knowledgeable. This is a different type of landscape for some. And so it's just kind of helping them understand that new routine that needs to happen. Hopefully that answers. And I know Justin has some updates on that too.
Yeah, on our end in Milwaukee, the definitive responsibility has been the school's green team. And so the way that we select schools is really important, and it goes through an equity-based process, but it's based on need and enthusiasm. So we really want to make sure that the schools want to go through this effort, and we really don't want to impose this effort on them, especially because the maintenance responsibility will fall on the schools, in particular the school green team, which may be composed of educators, as well as the maintenance staff at the schools. And so as a part of this, communicating what the maintenance responsibilities are from a very early on perspective is really important. And then trying to embed that into the curriculum and then ongoing maintenance responsibilities of the building engineer. But in our case, with the school district level, there's also a significant amount of training for district staff to make sure that if there is like a special request or work order that needs to be done, that there's a team of folks that can be able to come in and help support those kind of specialty repairs that may be needed.
Thank you. We're at time, but thank you all for sharing your low-tech, nature-based, high-impact stormwater stewardship strategies for schoolyards, wherever you are, whatever climate or region you're in. All these things are applicable. We're all in a watershed. Again, thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, Justin. And we hope we can see all of you here at our next lecture on Thursday, April 4th, where we will continue this conversation through the lens of heat and thermal comfort for students via shade and living schoolyards. Thank you so much.